So today what I wanted to do was kind of go over my personal favourite villains in the Resident Evil series. Obviously the villains being the people in charge of everything that's going on, all the bad things that have happened, the people behind all of that, and kind of go into detail about why I like them so much and their motive and stuff like that. Each one is taken from a different era of the Resident Evil games, from early to middle to late, which I realised after putting this video together, so it's quite nice to have them all kind of in different time periods, but without further ado, let's get into the first one on this list. So I think it had to be, him, the most iconic, probably, villain in the entire series. People have heard of him, no matter which game you come in from, you know who he is. Albert Wesker is the original bad guy, basically. He is the main villain in the first game. He essentially is the one that caused everything in the first three, because it's all the Raccoon Sea incident, the Arcade Mountains incident, and stuff like that. He's one of the original Umbrella scientists that created these viruses, so he does play a quite important role overall in the storyline. And he's just cool, man. Like, he's not to be messed with. He's super smart. He kind of lures the stars to the mansion to kill them off when things go wrong, because he doesn't want the secret getting out, and then obviously leads to Resident Evil 3, where the Nemesis is sent in to eliminate any surviving stars from the first game, to again make sure that when they do kind of destroy Raccoon City, that no one can expose the truth, which of it doesn't work. And then he appears in Resident Evil 4 in the background, mainly because obviously the main villain in that game is Sadler. Code Veronica again in the background, because Ashford's kind of the villain in that game. And then in 5 as the main villain again, with his nemesis being Chris, of course. Chris is kind of, his main adversary. Like, Chris and Wesker have probably the best rivalry throughout the whole series. Their story is so involved and important to everything that it should just make him even better. Like, he's such a big, important role, and everything Chris has done throughout the games is because of Wesker's involvement, and he's been trying to find him, as well as Jill as well. Jill and Chris do kind of have history with Wesker, so it makes sense that they have a bit of beef. So yeah, definitely an important character, definitely a massive villain, and maybe he'll return one day, who knows. Speaking briefly of Sadler, he's the next one on the list. Now this one is completely different in terms of tone, because if you play Resident Evil 4, you'll know the game doesn't take itself too seriously. I don't think any of the games take themselves too seriously, in a sense. They're all kind of classic cheesy zombie flicks in a way, but this one specifically is, it is the cheesiest game out of a lot of them, and to me, Sadler feels like very much like a movie villain in this type of thing. Like, if this was a movie, he'd be the perfect villain for a plot like this. Essentially, his idea is to infect Ashley, who is kidnapped, and she is the president's daughter, by the way. Infected her with the Las Plagas parasite, which is obviously, you'll find the Ganados, I believe they're called, in RE4, and that's what they're infected by. And essentially, get some money from the president to have her return safely. But obviously what he doesn't know is that she's infected with Las Plagas, and can infect the higher-ups in the US government, and because of him doing that, and then being infected, he can essentially control the US government, because he has control of the Las Plagas parasite. So, it's a very cheesy plotline, but it works surprisingly well with the game. I think it's the tone of the game, and just the plot and his plan that makes him so good in this. Like, he's not very present in the game. There's a lot of enemies you have to deal with. Obviously you've got Krauser, and the tall guy from the village, which I always forget the name of, and the little guy, which is Salazar, I believe. It feels like Village in a sense, like RE Village, because each villain character, I should say, has their own territory, and then you fight Sadler at the end. But overall, it's just a really classic plot. It just feels like a movie, and that's why it's so good. He's not massively dominant in the game, like I've said, but it's his plan, and he is the main villain, so it just fits so well. And some of the dialogue between him and Leon throughout the game is just some of the best, honestly. The dialogue in this game is perfect, so please keep it the same. when you do remake this game, please. And last but not least, we probably have my personal favourite villain in the series. Maybe that's a bit of a debate, but for me, it is. Heisenberg is incredible. Like, his character, his motive, his backstory, everything about him in Village is incredible. Honestly, best lord in the game. Like, Lady D's cool and all, but he's just better in every way. He's better in every single way as a character. Again, we'll briefly go over, who he is, and essentially, he was taken as a kid by Miranda to the village, and he obviously experimented on because she wants the perfect vessel to bring back her daughter, Ava, which is her kind of motive throughout the game, is to try and bring back her daughter who died of the flu years and years ago, because Miranda's quite old. And Dimitrescu, Moreau, and Donna were not compatible enough, but she has kept them in the village to kind of work for her, essentially. And Rose is obviously the one she wants, so they are helping her kind of, they're helping her plan, because she can give them something in return. But Heisenberg is sick of it. Like, he doesn't want to be, like, her slave anymore. He wants to kill her with Rose, which is obviously not a good idea, because the whole point of the game is to save Rose, but he wants to kill Miranda with Rose's powers, because obviously Rose is compatible with the Megamar seat as well, so Rose is quite powerful in herself, and he wants to use that to kill Miranda, which is a pretty good, he has a pretty good reason to do so. He's kind of been trapped in the village for years doing whatever she wants, and in the background in his factory he's been building this entire army of like mechanical zombies essentially to deal with her, and it's insane. Like, the backstory you have of him, if you've read like some of the lore and some of the concepts, is he was literally digging up graves from villagers who had passed away in the village and turning them into his like mechanical army. Like, he is going out of his way to make sure that he is prepared when the time comes to fully take over, and it's just cool, man. Like, it's cool. There's a bit of banter between him and some of the other lords, and his personality itself does kind of come out quite well, especially the Chris line that he references, the boulder punching in RE5, that really gave me a laugh the first time through. But just his whole reasoning is just, it's really good, it's really well done, and people do want to see like an alternative ending where what if Ethan did agree to help him, because he did ask for Ethan's help, but obviously we kind of are aware that if he was to help him, Rose would have died anyway, because that was his entire plan. But people want to see what would happen if they did, and that is potential for DLC. I mean, I've gone over plenty of DLC ideas for this game, and it's definitely one of them that's come up, but it would just be like a what if scenario, obviously. But no, yeah, overall Heisenberg, just as a character, his motive, his background, it's all really good, and he would have been such a bigger character in the game than what we thought, because again, looking at the concept art and things that were cut and scrapped through development, it wasn't just going to be him, it was going to be his whole family. Like, he had a brother, a twin brother, his dad was in charge of the village, and his mother was hooked up to like this machine. She was kind of turning into something, and it just would have been so cool to see all this stuff. But he's great, I love him, and I do want to see more of him than the others, so we'll have to see what the DLC brings us, but here's hoping that, this isn't the last we've seen of the Four Lords. But anyway, that is going to do it. They are my 3 picks for probably the best villains in the series. So just to recap, Wesker, Sadler, and Heisenberg. That is from, obviously, the games they're in. Obviously, Wesker is 1, Code Veronica 0, 4, 5. Not so much in 2 and 3, but it's more in the background, the kind of thing is in that game. It's a bit more prominent in the games I mentioned. Sadler, obviously, is 4, main villain at 4, and then Heisenberg is in Village. If you have played any of those games, which I'm sure if you're watching this video you definitely have, be sure to go check them out, especially the older games. If you can find the means to play, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, do so, because they're enjoyable games, and the 7 and 8 are just incredible too. But let me know what you think of my picks for best villain. Do you agree? Do you not agree? I'm interested to know. But yeah, this is something I'm going to do now a little bit in terms of video content, I do want to do one of these occasionally, whether it's, you know, top villains, best enemies to fight in the game, you know, that's more specific, like the dogs, the hunters, the lickers, stuff like that. Some of the favourites of those. Best moments in the entire series, whether that's a cinematic or a moment in the game. That'd be pretty cool to go over. But yeah, that'll do for now. Thank you all for watching and coming by, and I'll catch you all tomorrow.